Hello all and welcome to another chapter of Glamador's DFO Sprite Editing tutorial video series. This time we're going to discuss how to retool mods from foreign parts or older versions of DFO to work with new versions of DFO. Specifically, we're going to be working with a kitty paunch styre that I got from a KDNF website and my own light bender pack so that you can see how to take sprites from one NPK and put them in another without affecting anything important. So to start with, you're going to want to go into your Nexon DFO Image Packs 2 folder as usual and make a copy of what we're going to work with before you start. In this case, the NPKs in question are Gunner Effect Bullet, copy, and rename to Bullet 2, as well as Swordman Effect, copy, rename Swordman Effect 2. Where did it go? How very strange. Well, that's a complete mystery to me. Oh, you know what? It probably oh, there it is. All the way at the end of the Swordman effect, because numbers come later than underscore, apparently. Anyways, ignore that. It'll still show up. Now, once you're in your DNF extractor, you're going to want to locate the images from your mod that you're looking to put into another one. Here I have it in my KDNF mods folder, which is right over here, Kitty Paunch Styre. You'll see that in there is the Gunner Effect Bullet from the KDNF mod. Now you load it up and analyze it like any other NPK and locate the image in question. There it is. Styre Bullet. Now this is a really simple mod, it's just one bullet, but it makes it extremely long. Fans of the Witch class may recognize this as part of the Witch Awakening, with a little Pluto riding on the end of the paw. It's adorable. Anyways, what we're going to do is, over here, styrebullet.image, right-click, Save As File. Now I have all of my image files in one handy place in my NPK extractions folder. Styre Bullet, no need to rename anything, save as all files. It'll automatically add the .image to the end. However, if you decide to save as something else, Styre Bullet 2, it will not add the .image to the end by default. You must type .image if you alter the file name in any way. If you don't add the .image, then the DNF extractor will not recognize it when you go to try and replace it afterwards. You see all these loose image files here? It will not appear on this list, so you have to remember to name it properly. Anyways, now that that's done, we're going to go into our second place of interest, which I have on my desktop, Swordsman Effect.npk. Now, say this was an older version of my mod. You want to go in here and locate what elements have been changed. Here you see my Angel Bremen. So what you would do is you would right-click, Save As File, make a folder for it. I've already got one, Lightbender, full of all of these .image files relevant to my Lightbender NPK system. Anyways, once you've got all of your relevant image files saved, you can then open up the proper NPK in your Nexon folder, which for those of you who have forgotten where it is in C:*Nexon DFO Image Packs 2. Now again, we're working with Gunner Effect Bullet 2. Remember the 2. We made that copy for a reason. Now down here you see that Styre Bullet is much smaller in the default NPK. So what we're going to do is right click on the image itself, not dealing with the pings this time, but the image, and hit replace. Now we saved those in NPK extractions image files. Steyr bullet. Simple as that. It's in there, it's done. Now, you'll notice these red numbers, and while they don't make such a difference nowadays, I'm not totally convinced that this 2 thing always works, and if I'm going to play it old school, you're going to need to remove a little excess baggage from this NPK. Now, there are a few methods that you can use to do that. Principal among them is simply hiding something. See all this smoke? Who needs all this fucking smoke? It's worthless. So you go right click on what you want to hide and hidden map. Hit yes. Now that warning is there for a reason, because once you hide it, you cannot get it back. It erases it and zeroes out the coordinates. So unless you have a backup file or remember what the coordinates are, you can't get that back without having DFO re-download the file. You can't even get it back by hitting Control-Z or hitting the X button, because it is now officially gone. So we're going to go one higher and hide again. Now you'll notice that that reduced the data in the NPK by enough without significantly altering the overall effect of the skill. Now that we've gotten it down into the blue lettering territory, we can just fill it with paper, as the extractor calls it. Now, we can leave this as it is. Now, again, we didn't have to do that because we renamed it to 2 up here. But that's just in case you want to be extra careful. Moving on, I'm going to change this to character Swordman effect 2. Now this is the default Slayer NPK here. This is where a great many of the Slayer skills are stored. Now, say you only wanted some elements of my Lightbender pack. You didn't like all of them, you just want a few. So you download my pack and decide, I only want the tombstone. So how do I get that tombstone in here? Well, once you've saved the image file, as I've already showed you how to do, you just right-click, replace, Lightbender, tombstone. Now I've conveniently named it the same thing as it is in the NPK, but you can name this anything you want. This could be called Blarglesnarfen for all the NPK extractor cares, as it will replace the image file that is in the extractor presently with the one that you point to. Say I want to replace tombstone with summon area. Now see, that isn't going to work at all. It has a different number of frames and it's a completely different animation, so that's silly. But if that were to work, it could be done. It would load, it would just look very strange. So we're going to go back here. It remembers the last place you loaded an image from, so tombstone. Tombstone glow 1. And tombstone glow 2. Blue, white, and yellow. So it really is as easy as that. And conveniently, these here are smaller than the originals because they have a lower wavelength color spectrum, which certain colors take up less space than other colors. I really don't know why, but they do. Sometimes you'll get colors when you swap that will take up more space, sometimes less. However, if you change the palette to have fewer colors in the palette overall, instead of just replacing ones that are there with other colors, you will always reduce the file size. And I'll show you how to do that later on in the video. But for now, we're not going to bother filling this with paper because I know it's going to work since I already put this 2 on the end. So I can just close this and ignore this warning. And now when I load up the game, it's going to have the Lightbender tombstones, but nothing else is going to be changed. Still, say there wasn't enough space in here. Say that this was a red number and I needed to get rid of something. Well, the most common way to do that is to first look for one of these guys up here, an 18 or a teen sprite, which is only used by KDNF and CDNF for the age-restricted content that they have in place there. They're big on the censorship. We don't have it over here, and Nexon was gracious enough not to censor the game for us. Meaning, these are completely useless. DFO will never look for these, and therefore you can go ahead and hide all map by right-clicking on the image itself and scrolling down to hide all map. That hides it completely. It will never know it's there. And that gets rid of a ton of space. You see, we reduced it by an entire, I don't know how many bytes that is, but it's big. But say that's not enough. Say you replaced Tombstone with, I don't know, a giant skull. It would go way above file size, and you need to find a place to take some more stuff out. So what are you going to do? You want to hide stuff. But look at this. Look at how these sprites look almost exactly the same. All the time. I mean, look at how similar they look. What, do you really need him to bob up and down like that? Is it really necessary? I don't think it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go to modification-based mapping for the link. Now that's a little bit of broken English, and depending on which translation file you've used, that may say something different. But it's the one right above the texture modification and 2 above this little breaker line that you see my mouse running over right now. Now what this says is, what would you like this frame to look like based on a previous frame in the data? You always have to use a previous frame. You cannot link frame 0 with frame 3. You can, however, link frame 3 with frame 0. So let's link frame 1 with the only one that's below it, which is frame 0. Now you notice that frame 1 is now an exact copy of frame 0, but all of the data that was taken up by that extra ping file has now been removed from the NPK. So if we go through here and just link every one of these with frame 0, then we can reduce the file size by as much as removing every one of these sprites without actually destroying the animation. It becomes static, which is true, but it doesn't destroy the animation, and there are a lot of animations in DFO which you can link with almost no visible consequences whatsoever. However, a word of warning, certain files, since the light client modification that Nexon has made, don't like to be linked. Sometimes if you link a file, it will make the entire image invisible. I don't know why it happens, I don't know how to prevent it from happening, but it does, and you need to be aware of that. So if you make a modification and you've linked files, and you notice that the sprite is completely disappeared, not showing up at all, it's probably that error, and you're going to have to find some other way to reduce file size. But with that in mind, let's go ahead and extract this picture here so I can show you what I mean by reducing the color palette. Close this, ignore the warning. Now I'm going to open this up in Photoshop this time because I don't actually know how to do it in Paint.net, unfortunately. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my NPK extractions, locate the Sprite Swordsman effect, and the tricky. Sorry, Swordman Effect 2.mpk, because that's what we were editing. Ghost Bremen 1, and I'm going to open it up in Photoshop. Now here, say we want to find some way to reduce the color palette on this, to make it take up less space, so that the game isn't taking up useless space with colors that aren't really needed. Now one way we can do that is to take the brush tool in hue mode and simply run over it with a hue brush. Well, what did that do? That's filling in the background. That's silly. That's silly. That's not going to work. So I've got over here a couple of scripts, which I've got, actions they call it in Photoshop CS5, which allow me to do this automatically, but I'm going to do it the long way just for the benefit of you viewers. I am going to go to right-click Blending Options and then do a color overlay. I'm going to set the mode to hue or color. Either one will work. I think hue looks more natural, and it will definitely reduce the color palette. Now, no one said we wanted a red Bremen, so let's just go ahead and make him a green Bremen again. Maybe a bit of a more subdued green Bremen. One that looks a little closer to his original style. There we go. That looks a lot like the old Bremen, doesn't it? Hit OK. Now for comparison's sake, we can go back to the original and then the new one. The original and the new one. Now you'll notice he looks almost the same, and you can tweak the color so that he does look exactly the same pretty much. But what you can't really tell, but the computer definitely can, is that by doing that, we have changed every color in the Sprites palette to this sort of shade of green. Now, that drastically reduces the amount of information needed to encode the color palette for this sprite, which allows you to reduce the file size with next to no visual impact. So let's go ahead and save it as it is now. Make sure to save it as a ping, and we'll just call it 0-2. Okay, so there's our 0-2. And if we open up our DNF extractor again, analyze, Ghost Bremen, we can replace the resource at 32 bits with effect 2, Bremen 0-2, boom. Uh-oh. We seem to have fallen into that same trap that I talked about before, where certain colors simply take up more space. Now, what could have happened here, and I can't be sure, is that Bremen had such a small color palette to begin with that using the hue tool actually increased the size of his palette, which is what we did not want to do. So keep that in mind and look for a sprite that you want to recolor which has multiple colors in it which you can remove. Something like this. Notice how in these image files you have both an orange and a blue. Let's go ahead and save all of those and repeat that same process with this grand wave. Now here we can see the two distinct colors, orange and blue. So what we can do is once again go to Blending Options, do a color overlay, put it in hue mode, and make it all blue. Whatever shade of it you like. Let's put it at 196. That looks pretty similar to the original, right? And hit OK. And then we can just do the exact same thing for all of the layers. Color overlay, hue, 196. And if you want to be even quicker about it, what you can do is go over here and hit Copy Layer Style, and then paste that layer style, and all of a sudden all of that work is reduced to a simple click. Now we can go ahead and merge, flatten these layer effects by going to File, Scripts, and where did it go? There, Flatten All Layer Effects. Now that simply simplifies the saving process. I can just hit save now, and it'll automatically recognize it as a .ping. But if you have layer effects present and try to just save, it will make you pick what type of file you want to save it as, because it will default to a .psd. Now we want it to be a ping, so we just go ahead and select ping. Now this is important for later when I discuss batching in Photoshop, which is a separate video entirely, but keep it in mind for later. There we go. Now we can see that these were once orange and blue, but are now just blue. So we have removed colors from the spectrum, therefore reducing the file size. Now a little practice from previous videos. Replacement, modify all, 32. NPK extractions, Swordsman 2, Grand Wave Blade. See? That reduced the file size drastically, even going so far as to reduce it further than the little mistake we had with Ghost Bremen 1. And again, this has already been modified from its original file size, so filling this at this point will do absolutely nothing for us. So go ahead and ignore that again. Now we've got a working sort of Lightbender and Kitty Paunch Styer. And that's all you need to know. See you again in Chapter 4, where I will be discussing using DFO resources to modify other DFO resources, increasing the number of frames with other image files, and using images and the merging feature to determine coordinates without needing to open up DFO. Look forward to that.